Well, I had a request to do another rocket video, and it was about time I got to this. I've actually been missing the rocketry. I haven't done it in a while. But I figured I'd go ahead and use that same construction technique that I used before. I had kind of a goofy idea for a rocket. I remember as a kid seeing this Estes model rocket that you could put an egg in and it would shoot the egg out at the top of flight and splatter it all over. So I figured I'd do my little redneck version of that. But basically this is just a cardboard tube from gift wrap that's about 1.25 inches. That's not really important, but in case you're curious. I painted it 3 coats with just some spray paint I had that was sort of a pumpkin orange color. And then I figured I'd be goofy with the little fins. I made them shaped like an egg, you know, with a flat to glue it on. And then on the, I used my CNC and did a little really concerned looking egg face on each one of them. It's kind of hard to see. I might even fill it in with some wood filler and then you know, lightly sand it back, see if I can get it to show up better. But yeah, I used the same motor mount style as before. Check out my rocket making series if you're curious how to make these motor mounts, but it's basically just toilet paper tube wrapped around itself and super glued. You put a motor in there while you're, you know, wrapping it, and that'll make it perfectly sized. There's a little metal kind of retainer hook I made from a barbecue skewer. And then, you know, the little discs, I'll show you how to make those in the video too, but to mount it on the inside. Got the good old dollar store shower curtain parachute with the tape reinforced corners hole punched. I kind of lost I had some nice string that was really thin and strong. I lost it, I can't find it. But I have some twine that it should work alright. It's better to use that, you know, twine can kind of fatigue and break, whereas this other string was real thin and took up less space, real strong. Got some stickers for, you know, lettering, just for a name. I figured might be fun. But the idea for the egg launching on this part is I just put a toilet paper tube, wrapped it around itself, kind of put it in the end of the tube to kind of get it to, you know, push out, and then put a little super glue in between the sides. And then I took an egg carton. I had this plastic egg carton that came with some eggs we bought at the store. I cut one of the little egg compartments off of it and glued it on the top, cut it down a little bit. So the idea being I can have this as the nose cone, and then just kind of double stick tape the base of the egg in there, and then as it gets to the top of its flight and the ejection charge shoots this out, when it gets to the end of its travel, the rubber band catches, it'll just launch this off and boom, hopefully we'll have a nice kersplat with an egg. So yeah, I'll take you a little closer, show you what I got going, and we'll start building this thing. Alright, so I finished gluing on the fins there. Just used hot glue this time. This stuff's a lot stronger, so if you got the time to let it sit, go ahead and do that. If you're lazy like me right now, you can do hot glue. It might bust off every now and then, but pretty quick fix. And then what I'm going to do next here, I cut out a couple of pieces of paper, kind of like those Estes glue patch things, and folded it, tri-fold. But you know, in the other videos you'll see you can basically put this down, put a little glue underneath it, put a little glue on top, fold over the first part, put a little more glue, then fold it again over itself. And then you just put glue on the back and put it down in the tube, and that fixes it on there nice. The other side I'll do the same thing inside the nose cone, a little piece that's for the egg holder. And on the side you see I just hole punched it and put a little super glue around it to make it a little reinforced, and that's where I'll tie on my parachute. So I'll get that done and show you. Well, I forgot to show you putting the motor mount in there, but the basic idea, those 2 discs on it, you know, make sure they get some glue on there. The way I do that, instead of putting glue on the discs and making a mess when you're trying to put it in, with the motor mount out, I stick the glue tube in there about 2 inches, squeeze and twist the tube to get a little ring of glue, shove the motor mount in, and once I get it set where I want, about 1/8 inch proud of the bottom, just so it makes it easier to grab the motor, then I'll squirt some more glue in the end, let it drip down on the other ring, and let it sit upside down for a while to dry. On the other side, let's see here, you can see I've got the you know, the bungee glued in there. I put it down probably 5 or 6 inches and used a pencil to kind of push the paper down. On the nose cone, pretty straightforward. I just you know, glued it in the end of the nose cone piece, and then where that little hole punch was, I tied the chute on there. I started doing the triangle method of holding up the parachute, and then it kind of came off where I wanted it. But then you know, loosely wrap. You don't want to go very tight, just enough to get it to fit in the end of the rocket. Hold things together. Leave a little bit, you know, a little bit extra so you can kind of get it, imagine it positioned in the rocket. This is when we put our recovery wadding in. You know, normally I had that funny little chute protector thing that I make, the cup, but with these really thin rockets it's kind of hard to make those function right. They kind of get bound up pretty easily. So, you know, it's pretty simple to just do the recovery wadding method. But you jam the, you know, the bungee in there most of the way, and then the last few inches go ahead and stick that parachute in with the bungee, stick your cap on, and then at this point I'd probably put a little double stick tape on the bottom of my egg and put it in there just to hold it. And that double stick tape will for sure not be strong enough to hold this thing on when it goes and shoots off with the ejection charge. Then, you know, it's mandatory to come up with a cheesy name for your rocket, so I did that. Egginator. I probably don't have time for a launch video, but I'll go ahead and get it prepped for launch and show you the rocket. So I went ahead and put a rocket motor in there and then taped the egg on the end. You'll notice a couple other things I'll explain. But basically with rockets, I don't get too carried away with freaking out about center of gravity with these really cheap builds. I usually just give it a test in an open field and see how she does, to be quite honest. But, you know, the way you can tell is get it in flying configuration, put everything in it, put the motor in there, get the egg on, and then try to balance it out. The two things you're looking for, they call it center of gravity and center of pressure. And basically, center of gravity is where it balances out. So this balances out, you know, if I bounce it on my finger right about the base of the R. Maybe a little bit, you know, right around there. And at first it was about here, but I put a couple of pieces of lead at the front to help get a little more. I'll end up gluing those inside the nose cone. But I just was trying to get the center of gravity around halfway up the rocket. That's not so important. Sometimes it can be lower than that. The key is that the center of pressure is even lower than that. Without getting too wildly scientific, the idea of center of pressure is that if wind is hitting it from the side or whatnot, or hitting the fins, that if the center of pressure is higher than the center of gravity, the wind will cause the top of the rocket to win out and it'll blow that downward. Whereas if the center of pressure is lower than the center of gravity, when the wind hits the rocket, it's going to push the tail back in line, keep it going vertical. And that's what you want. Kind of think of those old Nerf footballs with the little tails to them. When you throw them through the air, the wind pushes that tail backwards. But if you were to put a bunch of lead weight in the tail, when you throw it, the tail would want to lead. So that's kind of what you're looking for. You would have to go through some pretty, not intense, but you have to calculate centroids of a side view of the rockets and figure out a bunch of that. That's kind of confusing for the average little model rocket builder. So another thing you can do is tie a string around where the center of gravity is, and then try spinning it around out in the yard if you have a strong string. And if the rocket's just wanting to flip all over the place, you're probably not in a good spot. But if the tail seems to want to stay in the back, then you're probably in a good spot with your center of pressure. Like I said, though, I'm a little lazy, so I just aim for, try to get it around halfway or better. And then usually the center of pressure with a lot of the simple designs ends up being kind of lower because of these tails. If there were no fins and no nose cone, the center of pressure would be dead center. So adding these fins causes it to be lower. The nose cone's pretty aerodynamic, so that doesn't affect a whole lot. So I think I'm probably going to be A-okay. But anyway, I'll go ahead and glue those two lead weights in the nose. It's always better to have a heavier nose than, you don't want all the weight in the tail. Another thing I could have done to avoid having to do that is not use such thick wood for the tail. If I used lighter weight tail pieces, we would have been alright. Alrighty, well, check out that flight video and we'll see how she does. Hopefully it doesn't just destroy itself.